Hello, gentle ladies and men. Let's consider the making of this piece. It's an illustration based off an image from Pixabay. The idea behind it was to make a portrait with chess pieces flying around it. Let's get started, shall we? Open up Inkscape and resize your canvas. I'm using a landscape canvas here. Let's download the image and then import it onto Inkscape. The source of the image is Pixabay. And then upon our canvas, let's resize it and put it in the desired position. This is where your image will stay throughout the course of your illustration. Let's put it in a nice place, shall we? Using the rectangle tool, we're going to be drawing a rectangular dark shape upon the canvas. With it, we want to make the canvas darker. If your illustration will be in a bright setting, use a brighter canvas. If your illustration will be in a darker setting, use a darker canvas. So with this, I'm kind of using this rectangle as a canvas, so I'm going to put it beneath the image. So a darker canvas makes a darker setting. Overall, we want this illustration to be dark. Using your calligraphy tool, we're going to be sketching the overall idea of our illustration. I need some chess pieces flying around, maybe a pawn, maybe castle, maybe a knight. The chess pieces will be flying around the face. So sketch what you have in mind. So right here, I was thinking of making this object a robot, kind of maybe something futuristic, but as you can see from the final piece, I did not follow through with this idea. But here I was sketching some idea of maybe a mesh around the face. You know, the chess pieces are not looking very good, so I'll just go onto the internet and download some images for the references. We need some references to draw the castle and the pawn, the chess pieces flying around. One great tip I should say would be the usage of layers. Do not neglect the use of layers. Split your illustration into layers. Let your sketch be on a separate layer as you see fit. Let the illustration, the chess pieces, the background, let them be on their separate layers. Right now, let's start drawing the outline of the face. So I usually use the calligraphy tool, a thin width, and then drawing, simply sketching. I am using a graphics tablet, and I am using the tweak tool to adjust the lines. So I'm going to keep the lines black for now and continue tracing around the face. The corners, the contours, we're going to be making sketches around them. Now getting to the hair, do not try to draw a very strand from the get-go. Try drawing the overall flow of the hair, the borders, the shape, overall shape of the hair. Think of it as a cardboard. Try drawing trace, just simple traces. Instead of thinking of it as many strands, think of it as very few strands from the start, at the start. Later we will add more strands. And now getting to the eyebrows, still using, in this case I'm using my freehand tool. This freehand tool with a bit of settings, with a graphics tablet, with pressure sensitivity enabled, a thin width, and then making some slight adjustments till I have that desired outcome. The outcome we need is thin tips from the start and the end, but bloated in the middle. So right now I'm trying to make some adjustments. Now we're going to be creating a new layer and we're calling it fills. Upon this layer we'll be filling the face, and everything regarding fills would be on this layer. So I'm just gonna trace the face and then give it a color. the main color you pick for the face would be the background, the overall base color of the skin. So the base color of the subject's skin is about yellow, but I wouldn't go with realistic yellow for now. Well, for this illustration, maybe it will change in the future, but I'm using some kind of yellow brownish, a bit of brown. You shouldn't go too dark and you shouldn't go too bright. Pick like a middle tone for the skin. You will add the brighter colors, the highlights later. You will add the shadows later. But for now, pick the overall base skin color, the middle ground of the shadows, the middle ground for the highlights. At this point, we are using our freehand tool, and then we are going to be making the fill for the hair. So still thinking of the base color for the hair and then using that to continue to follow up with the hair. So we know the hair is the shades blonde, and I'm going to be using this color for now. We are kind of picking the flow. You could easily fill it in with your pen tool, but for the edges I would just use the freehand tool to have those tips. Now our illustration is taking shape, so I'm going to create a new layer and call it palette. Upon this, I'm going to be imagining what I have in mind, the colors I have in mind for this illustration, the highlights and the shadows and the middle tones and the shades, the colors and how they would be represented depending on how light falls on them. I'm going to be trying to imagine them and draw them out, paint them out here on this fresh layer. So I'm imagining this circle to be a sphere, and this sphere would react in a certain way depending on how light falls on it, and it would also yield different colors depending on how light interacts with it. Think of it as a ball, a football maybe. At this point, I was thinking of giving it kind of a glitch effect, but as you know, it did not come through on the final project, but on the final design. I was thinking of making have this kind of glitchy effect with chess pieces flying around, but we did not do it. Maybe for a future illustration I could try. I haven't done that before. Let's turn off some layers and start making contours. The way I look at a face when I'm illustrating is I see it as a mountain. Mountains have altitudes. A mountainous area has highs and lows. So I see a place like the forehead, the tip of the nose, the lips as higher grounds. I see the sockets, the bridge of the not the cheeks, the jaw, the neck. Those are the lower parts. So I try to sketch more like a person mapping out contours of a mountain. I try to map out the contours of the face to enable me easily illustrate. So let's see this. Let's see all this that I'm saying. So going back to our freehand tool, I'm going to be using thin black lines to make some rough contours around the face. Alright, at this point you can see the contours. Just think of it as tracing the shadows, tracing the highlights, and giving yourself more reference in the future, because you would be adding shapes to these things you sketched out, these contours you sketched out. So they enable you work faster. So for example, this part is brighter, so I just trace around it. I know this part is darker, so or lighter. This part is it has shade on it, so I try to use thin black lines to simply trace around it, and using the tweak tool to make some slight adjustments to the paths. With these various things on the respective layers, I'm going to be drawing the eyelashes. These eyelashes they need to be thin, we know, and they need to have a pointy tip but a fat bottom. You can make adjustments with the settings up there and then draw. This file is available for download in the description of this video. So the layers I'm using and the arrangement, the structure of the project, you can download the file and view it and follow through with the course. At this point, we are done drawing the contours on the major features of the face: the cheeks, the lips, the nose, the eyelashes, the eyebrows. We have also made some kind of contours for the hair and the fills for the face, the neck. And from here, we would continue to add details and modify till we have the desired outcome. Okay, there is something I usually do. I usually draw some plus signs where I know we would have bright colors, really bright colors. So you may not have to do them, but I just find it helpful. I know the very bright areas, I just write plus signs, and dark areas, maybe I didn't do it on this illustration, but usually dark areas I write minus. Um, Brighter areas are right plus. I do this on a on a new layer so that we can easily delete it later, but this would help you know the flow of the illustration. Now that that is done, we are looking at our palette. We know that the bright areas, we want it to look yellowish. I was thinking of something, of making the face golden, but as you can see from the end product, it's not the way it was. I made some adjustment during the design. So the brighter parts, I needed them to be yellowish, and then the darker parts following our palette, I made them a bit brownish. So these yellows will not stay flat the way they are. I will use gradients and reduce the opacities and adjust the blur and add even more yellows to refine the face. And also, while making these shadows and these highlights, I usually create clip groups. If you want to know about clip groups, I made a video about clip groups. It's a very good feature in Inkscape. I wouldn't pause to re-explain it, but I will be using clip groups to quickly add these shapes. Very importantly, we need something to look at because we won't be illustrating this from the top of our head. We need to actually create a new layer and put a reference image. We're going to be putting a reference image. Inkscape doesn't yet have that feature to have a reference image, so we're going to be reducing, cropping the face of the subject and putting it on the side for us to use for the remaining process of this illustration. So have something to look at to have the overall feel of the face. I know with it you can know this is where the light is falling, this is where the shades are, and you already have your contours and it will really guide you. Already have a map, you already have a map. So have also a reference on the side where you could easily illustrate with. So I know there's a feature in Inkscape called I think X-ray mode. I made a video on how to use the X-ray mode. You could also use the X-ray mode, but I did not feel like using it for this tutorial. I simply have my portrait on the side and I'm illustrating with it. Okay, looking at this, for example, I've got this shape, and they're looking flat. Let's add some kind of form to it. Let's give it a gradient. You could use radial gradients, you could use linear gradient, but whatever works for the lighting you desire. So I could adjust the gradient, I could adjust the opacity of the entire shape and make it come out the way I need it to be. So the forehead, I know the brighter part is the top of the forehead much more than the part of the forehead closer to the eyebrows. So make adjustment to these light shades till you have your desired outcome. Okay, I know underneath the eyebrows would be darker, so I'm going to add some dark shades underneath the eyebrow. So simply draw some kind of shape underneath the layer of the eyebrows and then make it look dark. re-emphasizing the need for clip groups. You still need to know clip groups. If you do not know clip groups, go and watch the video. So I'm making the pupil and the shapes tending to the pupil using the clip group. The pupil, the iris, and the things regarding the eyes, I am using clip groups to easily put the circles and to put the shades and the highlights. Alright, this part will require a bit of a patience. So we are going to be making this part of the eye. Clearly, I did not really pay attention in biology class, but we'll be making these strands of lights. So whatever they are called, using clip groups as well, and using that our freehand tool or calligraphy tool, you can easily draw these lines on the eye. Nice. So repeatedly we're adding shapes where they're meant to be, changing their colors, adjusting their colors, reducing the opacities, increasing the blurs, and molding the face. Think of it kind of like sculpting. So we know this part is darker, this part is brighter, this part is middle tone. So using our palette, we know yellow, reddish, brownish base color. We increase opacity, increase blur, and adjust till we have our mold, our face. All right, now an important part to have is those reflections upon the pupil. So I'm just gonna give it white and a white shape with reduced opacity. Having that would give the eyes more life. You don't want dead eyes. Some people make that mistake in their illustration, illustrating and making it not have life. Give the eyes a bit of life and also put shadows upon the eyes. If you notice, there are shadows, darker areas around the eyes where the eyelids cast shadows upon the eyes itself and the reflection. Depending on your desired results, you can illustrate as you see fit. So, ladies and gentlemen, I did not really like the color of the face. So, to make adjustments to it, I'm using filters and then I'm going to colorize. I need to make adjustments. Color shift, I need to make adjustment to the face. It was looking too golden, too yellowish. The saturation was too much. So, I need to adjust the saturation and make some changes to the hue. So, using these settings as you see on the screen, I'm making changes to the overall color of the layer. The fuse layer is what I am applying these settings to. These settings are a useful way to change the colors you used on your art. So the color we used before was not working, so this one is the one we want to use now. Looks much better to me. So we're adding a bit more shades to the eyes. We know she has some eyeshadows on, so darker colors would be used for that area. So this is the way you should think of it. Your contours you made earlier are here for you, and then with it you can think of the colors and make adjustments to them. So we know we're looking at the lip and we should make the shades darker and the highlights brighter with their various colors. So if you look at the arrangement of my dialog boxes in Inkscape, I surely made sure that the color wheel is readily accessible, and from there I'm picking colors and using them as I see fit. And remember, this is an advanced level tutorial. I expect you to know your way around Inkscape, and this time lapse kind of is just to walk you through the steps I went through to make this piece. Okay, so I think I should slow down here and explain what is going on. So you want to form the lips. So do not go straight. to the brightest part. Think of the middle tones, the not so bright, and then the very bright, the colors that look more whitish. You have now your red, and upon the red you're having a kind of light red, and with that light red you're adding some kind of middle tone between the middle tone and the bright colors. Don't know if that makes sense. So you're using these colors to add some overall, to fill up some space. Upon these spaces you're going to be painting your much brighter colors. So Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now getting to the hair, we are going to be adding some darker shades to the hair. So not filling it straight away, we're using our freehand tool as well, and then we are having a zero tip at the start and a bloated middle. So with this we are making thick strands, not tiny strands from the get-go, but just thick strands at the start. Okay, now that the thick strands are done, add some kind of not so bright strands. You can adjust the thickness of the lines as you go. Not so thin, we are not making very thin lines yet, we are simply repeating the process, not too thick, not too thin, just adding the colors where they are meant to be. You know, those contours, those lines we drew earlier, they're helping us and guiding us to know where we should place those strands. Nice, this is already beginning to take shape. So now we're going to go over to adding the dark. These are the main shadows. These ones give your hair definition. So using even much darker colors. You know, the colors before this in terms of shade are reddish. This one is a bit brownish and it has more black in it. So using these ones are a lot thinner. Alright, so right here I was thinking of adding an overall shade to a side of the hair. So adding black, reducing opacity and stuff like that. Let's see how that worked out. Not very, not very. So redefining it, sketching it, making it follow the strands of the hair that are already existing. We want to have some kind of shade on the side of the head. And you could give it black, you could change the overlay type, overlay, multiply, add. You could set it just the way you want to get the effect that you desire. At this point, let's add some strands and let's make them bright strands. These strands are kind of like the brightest parts of the hair, so where the light really shines off the strands of hair. You could even make Z's kind of N. You could also make them like straight lines. So these ones are where your hair is brightest. I know it's not going to stay white. I think I would make adjustments and change the overlay type, the blending option. So, but for now, let's add the bright strands. Continuing on and keeping the hair aside, I am going to make a shape for the shirt. So just plainly drawing something to cover the shirt. Okay, and we know it has a wide field. We would add more definition to this later. Okay, gentle ladies and men, let's add some more strands, but with base color, not bright, not too dark, but just the base color of the hair. And we're adding the fall off of the hair on the shirts, and also the strands that fly around the hair. You know, the hair is not too defined, not too straight, so we need some strands that are flying off. Okay. Now getting onto the chest pieces. On a fresh layer of the own, I am making the chest pieces. This will follow kind of the same process. I usually have my outlines, the contours, and then filling it, the shades, blurring shapes, reducing the opacity of shapes, giving them shadows, shades, middle tones, highlights, and then it's kind of a simple process, if you understand the building blocks of this style of illustrating, I know there are various types of illustrating, of designing, but with this style of designing, where you have your contours and then having your highlights and the shadows, you can easily make things that are really advanced. So right now I'm tracing the castle with the graphics tablet using our freehand tool, but with a feel. We are not using calligraphy now, we are using the freehand tool and giving a feel, removing stroke. So at this point I was thinking of making an overlay for the face, but you will soon realize it did not come into the finished product. I was thinking of having a blue, kind of like light coming through a window, blue light coming through a window, and it only cuts off and shines on the face. But that was a cool effect to implement, but it did not go through at the end of the project. Okay, gentle ladies and men, for this section of the video, I am going to be adding some finishing touches to this piece. So the backgrounds, the effects, a couple of things flying around and stuff. So let's create a new layer called background. Upon this layer, I'll be adding the things that will occupy the back of the design. It's looking quite flat. It's looking black. I know the subject is okay, but we need things to fill up the background. Do not just focus on the subject you're working on, also think of the background. Okay, so a gradient, a shadow gradient coming off from the bottom of the subject, not looking too bad, not looking bad. So I'm just thinking of things from the top of my head and adding them to the canvas. Let's continue, shall we? So thinking of adding some motion blur to the chess piece, but that was not looking good. That was not looking good. That did not make it to the final piece. Let's keep modifying, thinking of something that would work with this our subject. Okay, so a red rectangle on the corner with a gradient, but in the background layer, let's thin it out. Let's add some kind of shadow, a cast shadow on the right. And let's add some objects flying around but blurred out white, and then we will turn down its opacity so that it won't obscure our subject. And then I'm also thinking of a piece of a sheet of paper flying through the air. So let's use our freehand tool, or let's use our calligraphy tool rather, sketch the outline of the paper and then add some fills to it. The shirt is looking too flat, so let's add some highlights to it. Red would look more reddish, a lot lighter when light falls on it, so let's add some lighter shades of red to the side. And then, since the theme of this is chess, let's make the background have some chess boards, but not like a complete chessboard, but some black rectangles making up the back. We would use white and black rectangles, but not complete, not like complete squares. Some of them would look like squares, but some would look like some rectangles. Okay, let's consider this green rectangle we have. Let's duplicate it and then increase the blur and reduce the opacity. By doing this to certain shapes, to certain colors, you can make it look as though it is glowing. When you have a shape, you could duplicate it, increase the blur, reduce the opacity. Still in the same position, you can have a simple glow effect. You could do it 3 times to achieve even more glow on your shape. So I'm going to duplicate it and put it somewhere else. The background is taking more shape, it's looking much better. If we decided to spend more time on this project, we could have made it look even better, but this will do for now. Also, there's something we missed. Let's add more detail to the ears. We don't want it looking very flat, and we know we added some detail to the face, but the ears shouldn't be left out. And then let's consider adding the overlay. We know there are some green rays of light. Let's also put a bit of green on the face. So I'm creating a new layer and calling it overlay. The blending mode of this layer would also be called overlay. So on this, I'll be making some green shapes, and it will cast a green light upon the layers beneath it. So I'm going to put a bit of green on the hair by just using the freehand tool and giving it a feel, and then tracing a shape on that side of the hair. So giving it a green feel, and then clicking on the layer. We are selecting the entire layer now, and we are changing the blend mode to overlay. As you can see, the overlay type has changed. Let's see what it looks like with multiply. No, not good enough. Let's use overlay. So, and then returning to the shape using our select tool, let's make it brighter. Darker green would not look so good, so let's use brighter green. That is much better. Brighter green, yes. And then let's make another shape here, still on the same layer. On this side of the face, we want a bit of green here, right? Then let's tweak it up a little and adjust. We're going to turn down the opacity. I know it looks too greenish, but we will turn down the opacity here on the entire layer. But we just need some light coming off, some green light showing up from the left, from our left. Okay, so let's use soft light. Soft light looks much better. I know the layer is cold over there, but soft light is looking much better. With this, we have the stage set, and whew, that was a long one. That was a long one. This entire piece took about, it took over 6 hours to it took over six, no, about, not over, like I think close to, very close to 6 hours to make. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any question at all, you can drop a comment, and then I will look through it. If we need to make a video regarding the question, we can make a video regarding the question. So thank you very much for watching, and see you on the next video. If you're still hanging around, please do not forget to subscribe, do not forget to like, do not forget to share. We need to reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's reach it together, shall we?